All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be Burgundy Flag Eyes game review of the San Francisco 49ers. Going into this week, I've done several games of research. I've looked, I think it's over 3 or 4 games of theirs that they've had so far this year. I don't really know all that much about the San Francisco 49ers prior to this week, but given the extra week that we had having a bye, that's very, very encouraging going into this game. So before I get into any of that, some of the news that I've got, some of the things that I got coming up with recent schedule shifts that I have going on right now, I'm not going to be able to do the live stream for a couple of weeks on Wednesday of the review of the games before. I'm having to sink more and more time into the game review stuff, and I'd much rather do that than do the live stream events. The live stream events take up a whole couple of hours of my evening on top of the other stuff that I got going on. So I was able to do about 3 weeks of that. It was a lot of fun when I did it, but now it's getting to the point where we're getting into the middle of the season, and it's getting harder to negotiate some of these teams. Granted, a lot of them are division rivals, which is going to be easier to give a synopsis of those teams because you know them so well, but there's been some advancements even in that area. So not necessarily going to be doing that. So this is going to go right on into the game review for the San Francisco 49ers. Some of the games that I got to watch, I went back and watched 3 of their games and was very, very, I would say, well informed with some of the stuff that I saw. They've got one of the interesting things that have happened this week. Out of the 3 veterans that are on this football team for San Francisco, the 49ers ended up letting go one of their veterans. NaVorro Bowman was released by the San Francisco 49ers. He is no longer an option on this team. The team decided to release him and cut ways with NaVorro. Apparently there were some creative differences between the parties, which is understandable. NaVorro Bowman was not necessarily living up to his potential. In fact, I had actually scouted him as being somebody that we could probably exploit at that linebacker position. There were several plays where he could have made a major difference in turnovers and was not able to help out his football team. One I remember in particular was an interception that he could have had that could have changed the tide of a game. That did not happen because he ended up dropping the football. He's been late on getting to a lot of point of impact plays on running downs, and he's just kind of struggled this particular season. And I'm personally kind of surprised because they still have a whole hell of a lot of football left to play, and some instances in which NaVorro Bowman can sort of reinvigorate himself. But obviously things just I have not read the complete article on what's going on there, but at this point, it's rather moot. So the 49er San Francisco game is going to be interesting because this is going to be the second game that we've played this year against an NFC West team that has ties to the Washington Redskins at the head coach position. The last one was Sean McVay with the LA Rams. That was a team that we traveled on the road and had actually beat. Played a really, really good game against them and a really, really well-coached team. And we have a similar situation coming up this week, except the Niners are going to be coming back to Washington, which is not going to bode well for them as far as that crowd's concerned. But hopefully that's going to be a major influence for us. Now, of course, taking a look at the San Francisco 49ers without concentrating too much on the Kyle Shanahan situation, and we can go on for hours about that, and I'm not going to do that here. There's going to be plenty of people out there that are going to argue that case for me. Taking a look at some of the stuff for the San Francisco team, some of the things that we're going to have to take a look at. Brian Hoyer at the quarterback position. Brian Hoyer is, in my opinion, a decent quarterback. He's got a really, really good coach that's coaching behind him. A guy who understands quarterbacks, kind of a quarterback's kind of coach, kind of like Sean over in LA. Somebody that can get the ball out quickly, can give him some options. And if he's given a couple weapons and some time to throw the football, he can be a very, very good quarterback. However, he's going to have to settle for decent because with all the options that he has available to him, he's got a couple weaknesses as well. Decent passer on check down. Decent passer. He's not a great passer. He's not phenomenal. But when it comes to check down, staying in the pocket, and being able to throw the football, which he does not do much, he's learning this. But he's able to make some decent throws out of that. It's just a confidence situation. You know that he is at his best when he knows where he's going to throw the football. In other words, if he's got a target, he doesn't do too bad of a job of waving off a defense before going to his initial target to make a throw. Usually that's on second and third down. He pretty much knows where it is that he wants his one-on-one matchup, and he's able to go in that particular direction. However, he has some weaknesses. He has very little confidence in the pocket, especially when it comes to being hit several times. He can get hit and he can get rattled in that pocket to where he will end up holding onto the football just a little bit too long. I've seen that in a couple of his games. He has a tendency to leave the pocket out of the back. So when he gets that football and feels the pressure coming on, he will back up, which is not a good thing for a quarterback to do, especially out of a 5 or a 7 step drop. He needs to be able to move up. And I don't think he has a whole lot of confidence in his interior line to be able to sustain that pocket moving up. So if he moves back, it's going to put him in direct contact with defensive ends and outside linebackers. So sustaining that pocket is one thing that we did fairly well against the Kansas City Chiefs in the last couple games we've played, is been able to maintain outside pressure to bring that quarterback up through the middle. So that's going to be something that's going to work in our favor if we were able to do that. If he is flushed out underneath, if Brian Hoyer is flushed out underneath, he's going to want to throw. His throwing ability is not really all that great, especially when he's on the run. So that's not necessarily good for them. It's good for us. His running ability, he's not that fast. Not a fast quarterback out of there. He will tuck that ball and try to run as much as he can, but given on third down and long distances, more often than not, he's going to want to take that sack. He's very, very limited. Kyle Shanahan's kind of limited by his ability, so that's something that I think going into this game we can definitely exploit. If we can collapse that pocket and sack him, especially if he makes dumb decisions on moving out of that pocket, out of the backfield, it's going to work well for us towards the third and fourth quarter. And this is a very, very resilient team, and he's a very, very resilient quarterback. Brian Hoyer can take a beating and keep on ticking. He's taken massive hits in some of these games. The LA game, he took huge hits. In the Arizona games, 2 major division rivals that he literally got beat up on, but still was able to come back and play fairly well. So he can play hurt, he can play hit. It's just his confidence. That's the situation that ends up affecting him the most. So it's a mental thing. Running back position, they got a couple running backs on this football team that are young and up and comers. They got 2 rookies, one in particular, Joe Williams, who is a decent backup, somebody who's going to fill in if there's an injury at that running back position. One of the main rookie features that they have at this position is Matt Breida. Matt Breida is good. He's fast. He's shifty. He's got great hands out of the backfield. But their main focus, their main guy out of the backfield is number 28, Carlos Hyde, and as well he should be. Carlos Hyde has decent speed. Decent speed, not great and phenomenal speed, but he has decent speed. He has great vision. He actually has really, really good vision. He actually follows up and follows lead blockers really, really well. If he's given the opportunity to get into the backfield, he will gash this football team for some decent yards. Not anything like what we saw last week with the Kareem Hunt. He doesn't have that type of explosive ability, but he does have the ability to open up plays. He's not necessarily all that great at breaking open tackles. So if we can get initial contact on Carlos Hyde, that will definitely work out to our favor. Now, moving right along, one of the major points of focus that I want to take into consideration here is they do feature Carlos Hyde in this running game quite a bit, and I think they do this to kind of take the football out of Brian Hoyer's hands on a consistent basis. Towards the end of this Arizona Cardinal game, it became a shootout, and they started to shift a little bit away from their running game, which I think was probably a little bit detrimental. One of the things I've heard a lot about the San Francisco football team is that they're very, very resilient football team in the fourth quarter, and they've only lost by a certain amount of points. You go watching this football team, and it's not because they're good that they're at the end of these football games. It's because them and the performance of their opponents are really, really bad. A lot of miscues, a lot of penalties, a lot of dropped plays, a lot of mental errors on both parts of all the games that I have seen. There's been a lot of this. They've played Indianapolis, who's not that great of a football team to begin with. LA was a team that should have put this team away, but they didn't. A lot of mental errors in that football game and a ton of mental errors in the Arizona game. There were drop passes all over the place. And San Francisco, I think out of the last 8 or 9 third down conversions, they ended up converting on making it first down, but then the penalties ended up bringing them back. So it's not that San Francisco was this phenomenal offensive team that will keep them in games. It's just that the football games have not been that well played. And teams have kept the San Francisco 49ers in these games at the end, and they will prove their resiliency that way. One of the things that I think you guys need to pay attention to is number 44, Kyle Juszczyk, I think I don't even know how to pronounce his damn last name. Juszczyk. You're going to have to look that one up. But look for number 44 out of the backfield at the fullback position. This is one of the reasons why Carlos Hyde is a decent running back, is because he has a fullback in number 44 that is a great lead blocker. They will line up in the power I formation, and anywhere number 44 goes is where we need to key our point of impact at. Now, granted, Carlos Hyde will often cut off if the play is not there, but that's okay. You got to take number 44 out of the play. If you see him in the backfield, especially lined up in the power I formation, take a look at him as being a lead blocker. Another thing that they will do is they will swing those offensive linemen out. They will pull that left tackle out. That left tackle is actually pretty decent as far as blocking goes, and then they'll pull in a number 44 fullback right behind him, so they got two really good lead blockers, and if Carlos Hyde gets to that second level behind those two blockers, he's going to gash us for a lot of yards. So that is a play that needs to be stopped at the line of scrimmage. Look out for number 44. So they do a lot of scheming, a lot of 3rd and 5s that will go towards this formation, so take a look at that. Wide receiver sets, Aldrick Robinson is a guy that's on this football team who is actually a really good wide receiver. He just makes a lot of mental errors. He drops a lot of... He's a good target. He's a decent route runner, but he has a hard time with keeping hold of the football, so he oftentimes will drop it on big plays. He has a hard time coming through when his team needs him the most. Marquise Goodwin is an individual who's a fairly decent wide receiver. Haven't seen a whole lot out of him. Number 81, Trent Taylor. Trent Taylor is a rookie coming out of the back. He's a slot receiver. He's a lot like a Jamison Crowder, but more often than not, he's a guy that reminds me of a Cole Beasley, and not necessarily because he's a white guy. He's just really short, really shifty. He's got decent hands. He does make some mental errors, though. He will commit penalties. He's young. He's a rookie. But he is a guy that Kyle Shanahan will go to in a pinch, especially on 3rd and short. Take a look at number 81, Trent Taylor. We're going to have to do some stuff to be able... They're going to look for the one-on-one matchups out of him, especially when it comes to linebackers trying to guard this kid. This kid's going to be an up-and-comer for this football team in the next couple of years. Their main target, the main guy, is somebody that the Washington Redskins fans know really, really well. That's number 15, Pierre Garçon. I don't have to really go into a whole lot of what makes Pierre Garçon a special individual, but they picked him up on an $8 million contract this season. Terrific route runner, great hands, great catching radius, and even a great run blocker. Very, very intense. This kid, what am I saying kid for? He's an old man. They will go to him on 3rd and long. He is their clutch wide receiver, and this guy will come down with it. He still can't jump very high, although they have gone deep to him. It's one of the things that Redskin fans may not necessarily remember is that if you give him the opportunity deep, he can come down with his football. If it's anywhere near him on one-on-one coverage, you can pretty much bet that Pierre Garçon is going to win that matchup. That's just who he is. That role has been taken away from him when he was in his last couple of years in Washington because we had a deep threat in Djax. So we didn't give a whole lot of credibility to Pierre Garçon, and he's getting that in San Francisco. He had 3 major deep passes that he caught that kept this football team in the game against LA, a game that they almost won, probably a game that they should have won on Thursday Night Football a couple of weeks ago. Pierre Garçon was the major featured individual in that comeback win. Pierre Garçon and Sammy Watkins, that's what I'm thinking of. Sammy Watkins, those two individuals in the second half of that football game were phenomenal wide receivers. Pitch and catch throws by their quarterbacks, tossing it to these two individuals. Great performance from the both of them, but Pierre Garçon is a guy that you know that's going to be amped up to play against this Washington Redskins football team. And I have a feeling that Brian Hoyer is going to target Pierre Garçon several times in this football game, and with Josh Norman being out, Josh Norman no longer being an option for the Washington Redskins, this is going to sing wonders for Pierre Garçon. I bet you he cannot wait to get here on Sunday to show us up in front of our fans, to show us what it is that he still has the ability to do. So look out for this guy. Offensive line. This offensive line has some issues. They're a young offensive line. They still have not had the ability to mesh. One of the things that they are able to do is well, actually, some of the things that are not able to do, they don't really do a good job of finishing blocks. They're decent on pass protection. They do not pick up stunts very well. They do not pick up blitzes very well. They rely on a halfback or a running back to be able to pick up a lot of these blitz schemes. Blitz scheming against this offensive line might not necessarily be a bad option for us because they're susceptible. several teams their last couple of weeks have dropped all 8 men into coverage and have only rushed 4. This last game that I watched with the Arizona Cardinals, that was all they did, was rush 4 and drop the rest. I don't necessarily remember if the Indianapolis Colts mixed up a lot of coverages. I'm pretty sure that they did. But getting to Brian Hoyer is going to be key in this football game. And I think that we have a really good defensive front to be able to do that if we wanted to drop 4. But I think mixing up some blitzes in this game, not necessarily doing it all the time, but doing it on a fairly consistent basis would actually work really, really well for us. Watch out for the center. The center coming out and blocking at the second level. Anytime you see that play, then you're looking at an offense that's going to want to run to the outside edges. This team likes to run behind their big left tackle, but they will often run it to the right side as well. But anytime you see that center pop out from the line of scrimmage and pick up that middle linebacker, he's going to be looking for Foster. He's going to be looking for Zach Brown. If he comes out to that second level and blocks, those guys need to get to the point of impact and drop like a hurry. That safety needs to be able to come up and stop that run play as well. So we need to be able to stop this running game at the line of scrimmage, and those are 2 major keys that you're going to see. Number 44 in the backfield at fullback position, and when that center pops out and blocks at the second level. This team does a fairly decent job at the zone stretch run scheme. They do a little bit of read option as well, not too much. Not that I'm really all that worried about running Brian Hoyer. I don't think anybody is. I think at that point you just pretty much focus on Carlos Hyde. But this offensive line is very, very susceptible to breaking down. They do not shift their coverages a whole lot. I think that's something that Brian Hoyer doesn't do a whole lot of. We're able to mask some of our scheme at the last minute, especially if it's going to be a home game for us. I think we can confuse this team. We can confuse this team with stunts. We can confuse this team with blitzes. So something to look forward to. They don't communicate very well, and they don't audible hardly at all. So definitely things that are going to work in our favor. This team will do a really good job at testing the range of your outside linebackers and your safeties. They will often start plays in the middle of the zone and go often out towards the sidelines, testing the speed of your linebackers. They'll do it with running backs. They'll do it with tight ends. If they're just going to be successful at doing this. Kyle Shanahan is really, really good at drawing up these types of plays. They're not going to go for much yardage. They're going to get you in 3rd and short, but look for those plays in the middle. Look for that zone stretch run, but that's usually how it starts, is you'll throw that outside route going towards the sideline for that shallow distance. You'll pick on those outside linebackers, so look at them trying to stretch out that defense by doing that. They prefer, again, like I said earlier, they prefer to run on the left-hand side of that football. If that was where they wanted to run it behind that fullback and the big left tackle, that's what they will do it. I don't see a whole lot of running up the middle, but I think a big part of the reason why is because they've played against some really, really big defensive tackles. They've gone up against the likes of Aaron Donald. They've gone up against the likes of some other individuals that are really, really big in that middle. We don't really have a stout middle. We have a really good rookie that's in there, but we are more stout than most of the teams that this team has played. So they may end up trying to test us in the middle, but they're going to mainly want to run around the outside edges and pick on those defensive ends. If this football team gets within the 5-yard line, within the red zone, usually within the 10 or the 5-yard line, they will run the football every single time. They will mix up their scheme, they will mix up their formations, but ultimately they'll run options with people, or they'll move people in motion, changing up their fronts. But at the end of the day, they're going to want to give the football to Carlos Hyde and have him run it. I've seen them on several occasions, whether it was I think mostly it was the LA Rams. They'll get within the 5-yard line and they will run. They'll run all 4 downs. Where they are the most successful is when they get into that power eye football scheme. When they get into that jumbo package power eye, they will run right behind number 44 to get Carlos Hyde that initial block. If they can get that initial block with Carlos, with their fullback, Kyle Juszczyk, whatever his damn name is, then they will get Carlos Hyde right behind him, and that is where they'll break open that running play to be able to try to score with the football. So take a look at that. Within the 5-yard line, they're going to run that football pretty much every single time. If number 82 is lined up in the backfield at fullback position, this is not a running play. Anytime you see number 82 line up at fullback, this is a pass play with out of the backfield. They're going to take number 82, they're going to swing him out wide and roll him out and throw him the football, or they're going to have him run up the middle and then shoot to the outside as an outlet. So if number 82 is in, I really wouldn't be all that worried about this being a running play. It's probably going to be a pass play. This team, one of the things this team does well is if they have momentum, They will come out of the huddle really, really quickly and get that ball off. They're really, really good at executing at least that. And they've caught a couple defensive rotations with their pants down. They've caught them. They're really, really good at getting that play out. As soon as they get that play out and out of the huddle, they've got 15, 16 seconds left on that clock, and they're ready to snap the football. So we're going to have to be really, really careful how we're rotating defensive players on and off this football field. Again, I said their third down conversion ratio has been horrible. Their mental errors have been abound. Something to look forward to as far as a defense is concerned going up against this offense. If we can get some noise out of that crowd and keep a lot of those San Francisco fans at bay, this could honestly work in our favor because they don't really perform well on the road when it comes to being able to do that. I would like to see us, like I said before, shift schemes if we can with that defensive front to help confuse this this offensive line. That will definitely help us. They're going to give up some penalties. That's just what they do. They do that fairly consistently, so we can capitalize on that as far as the defense is concerned. Moving on over to the defensive side of the football. Now, the interesting part about the defensive side of this football is they got some decent players. Some people to look after. Defensive line going after them. Well, their linebackers actually aren't. Now that they have Navarro Bowman out, they're very young at the defensive backfield as far as linebackers are concerned. They do well at converging on the football. They do well on pass protection, but they're not excellent. They're not great. Very, very young defensive front. Taking a look at the defensive line. Defensive line is a point of focus. Number 91, Eric Armstead is an individual who has ability. He's got great size, great speed. He's actually not that bad on stunt. He has great speed. He doesn't have phenomenal speed, but he is a guy that we definitely want to kind of key off of. Armstead often comes out with average play for the most part, but he does have the ability to break it loose. Defensive tackle Earl Mitchell doesn't really impress all that much as far as I'm concerned. Good size, good strength. He's really, really good at the point of impact. Is really good at maintaining gap integrity at the middle, but he doesn't really converge or break down that pocket all that well. Number 95, defensive end Tank Carradines. Good size, great arm span. Good at extending arms and maintaining gap control, but not a whole lot of speed himself. But the main focus on that defensive line is number 99 defensive end DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner is the playmaker on this football team, but he is, in my opinion, nowhere near the individuals that we have had to face the last couple of weeks. We've had to go up against Houston. We've had to go up against Donald, who is a defensive tackle. We've had to go up against all kinds of individuals that Morgan Moses and Trent Williams have had to fend off. But DeForest Buckner is a guy at the defensive end position. If it's one thing that Redskin fans need to focus on, is that they will take an outside linebacker and line him up in a 3-4 scheme, and they will line him up on that outside D gap, and that will force the tackle to go out and block him, and they want one-on-one coverage between DeForest Buckner and your guard. This is kind of what scares me a little bit with DeForest Buckner going up against a Sean Loval. One of the go-to moves that DeForest Buckner has when he wants to get to the quarterback every single time is going to be a swim technique. He utilized that against the Arizona Cardinals, against a rookie who really, really sucked in that game, and DeForest had probably 10 massive swim techniques that got him by that guard and got him right up in the grill of Carson Palmer. He spent all day in that backfield. We do not have a rookie at left guard. We do have a very, very seasoned veteran who is way better at run blocking than he is at pass protection. He is susceptible, but I think that Sean Loval is going to present a little bit more of a challenge for DeForest Buckner. It's going to be interesting. That's going to be a key matchup, is going to be Sean Loval and DeForest Buckner. Something to look at. I don't think DeForest is going to have the success that he had the last couple of weeks simply because Sean Loval is a much better player. But Sean Loval is susceptible, and that's the one thing he needs to pay attention to, is that swim tech. If he can get past that swim tech, he's going to take DeForest Buckner out of this play. Defensive end's got good speed, number 59. Defensive tackle, DJ Jones, is an individual who's really, really good up the middle. Number 94, Thomas, defensive end, has shown some really, really good penetration. Often has some mental errors. He can straight up collapse the pocket. Somebody who's really, really good with the drive of his football, with his legs, really, really good with his arms and his hands. Actually, Solomon Thomas. What am I thinking of? Solomon Thomas he's a very young player. has had some features in his last couple of weeks. He's starting to grow and starting to learn as a former Stanford individual defensive end. At this position, he's a guy who a couple times a game will make some pretty big plays. This defense will often show double A gap pressure, but very rarely will they take it on a blitz up the middle. They will show it, but they very rarely will do it. They'll try to test your middle, but I haven't seen a whole lot of times where they will actually blitz up the middle. Gurley was an individual for LA, was an option out of the backfield for the LA Rams. And they did this several times, throwing to him out of the backfield, getting him some space to run. And I think that they were focusing a little bit on Gurley, and this is not necessarily something that I think LA did a whole lot of. They did it on occasion. I think this is an open area for the Washington Redskins to be able to do, being able to target Thompson out of the backfield and giving him room to run. This is where he can be extremely lethal, and if they're not doing their homework, I think that we can gash this defense for a lot of yardage if we're able to use Thompson out of the backfield. I think that LA did a very, very good job of running right up the middle on this defense. I think we can have a lot of success of running right up the middle on this defense if we use the power of attrition. Going up and going off and right up the middle on this football team, eventually I think this team's going to break down right up the middle on defense, running away from that defensive end position and going right after the tender underbelly, if you will. One of the weaknesses that is exploited by a lot of football teams out of this backfield has been going after number 33 cornerback Rashard Robinson. Rashard Robinson is a second-year kid out of LSU, if I'm not mistaken. He has great ability, great size, great range. He's chippy, he's aggressive, but he has a lot to learn, and I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of teams go after him. Some of the deep plays, he is right there to make the play, but he makes stupid mental errors, which I think is one of the reasons why a lot of teams go after him, and is one of the reasons why I think the Washington Redskins should go after him as well. This is a susceptible target for Pryor to go after. That's just my opinion, is going after a Rashard Robinson. It wasn't necessarily last week or the week before, but I think a Rashard Robinson is a key for this defense, for us being able to exploit this defense. He, a lot of times, pass interference penalties will get the team's gains. Also, illegal use of the hands. He's been called several times. These are just mental errors that he makes that I think we can exploit as an offense. Number 29, Jaquiski Tartt. I just know his last name. I don't know how to pronounce his first name. Is a guy who I think that we can beat one-on-one with tight end coverages. Vernon Davis and Jordan Reed. There's a weakness with this number 29. Tartt is great at stopping the run game, but he is not very good one-on-one lining up with tight ends in pass defense. I think this is obviously a kid that we can exploit a lot. One of the things that I would like to see this offense do against this defense, I would like to see us manipulate our snap count just a little bit more. I think this is like the next step as far as a Washington Redskins offense is concerned. I think that this will help us become a much better unit. One of the things that the Philadelphia Eagles was able to do against us in Week 1, one of the things that I think made them extremely successful against this offense was their ability to predict the snap count and being able to get their rush. That little added second was able to get them to Kirk Cousins a little bit sooner. Manipulating the snap count and being disciplined on that offensive line, I think, is something that is the next stage for us. This is going to be a home game. We can use that hometown advantage, that home crowd advantage. There's going to be some 49er fans in the stands, obviously. That's just the way it's going to be. But if it's going to be a time to work on that, this is the time to do it. This is a team that tries. There's a lot of encroachment penalties on this football team because they try to predict the snap count. If they're able to predict the snap count on this Washington Redskins football team, that's going to work to their favor. We don't want to give this defense any more confidence than what they deserve. They don't have a whole lot of confidence to begin with, but we don't want to be that staging point. So I think this is going to be something that we can exploit, something that we can work on. That's going to be at that next level as far as this offense is concerned. Obviously, it's going to be concerning whether Trent Williams is able to play this weekend. It's rumored that he is questionable. It's highly likely that he plays. I'm at the point where I'm willing to say, as a fan, I would almost like to see him not play, simply because this is a team that we should beat. This is a team that we can beat. This is a team that we can play very, very well against. I think that this changes things as far as Trent Williams being in the football game. We don't have to necessarily worry about that left-hand side, but if we're going to find out what our backup position is like, this is a team to do it against. It's not necessarily something we want to have. I would love to have Trent Williams for these next few games that we've got coming up. And taking a look at some of these games that we have coming up, we've got a fairly decent schedule with the San Francisco 49ers that we have right now coming up this week. After that, we've got the Eagles, Cowboys, and Seahawks. Those are games that I would like to see Trent Williams play in. I would like to see him fairly healthy going up against the Eagles, especially against the Dallas Cowboys, and I think we would have a lot of fun on the road against the Seattle Seahawks with Trent Williams. And if I got to keep him out against the San Francisco 49ers, obviously Buckner is an individual that I highlighted before, and he's not necessarily a person that Trent Williams is going to be going up against. I would keep him out in this game. If it's going to mean he's going to be healthy for at least those next 3 weeks, then I think that that's something that we can probably do, and we got the personnel to do it. If Tyan Secchi is going to be an individual who prefers to play that right guard position, let's see what Morgan Moses does at the left. He's not going to be great because right guard is way different than playing left guard. Or, I'm sorry, right tackle is way different than playing, left tackle. The last time he played left tackle, I think, was probably college in Virginia. So definitely something that is going to be a little bit of concern. But we do have some other options as far as that left tackle position comes to play when it comes to Trent Williams not being there. So definitely something to look forward to. Exactly what's going to happen. I have a feeling he's going to be a game day decision, especially since it's going to be a game on the road. So having Josh Norman, who is definitely ruled out, having Trent Williams questionable, if he doesn't play, I will not be crying tears. I would much rather see him healthy for the next couple of weeks. But that's pretty much it, guys. This is a game that we should win. This San Francisco team... This football team obviously is 0-5. They haven't won a game yet. They're looking for a victory. They've got a tough road game coming up here. They're looking at playing us. They play at home against the Cowboys. And then they go against the Eagles. They're playing against 3. Let's see, their next 5 weeks, 4 of their games are against one of the best divisions in football in the NFC East, and I can say that with confidence. We're really, really good. So they've got us, they got the Cowboys, they got the Eagles, then they play at home against the Cardinals, and then they're back on, playing against the Giants. So not a good schedule for them. This is a game that they want to get a jumping off of with a victory if they can. But honestly, it's going to be a tough call for them being on the road playing against a team that's got a great defense, an offense that is meshing very, very well. We've got great weapons at the wide receiver position, but we're really dangerous at tight end and the running game. Our quarterback is looking really, really good this year. If they can exploit the fact that we're not going to have our big left tackle in there, then that is definitely a perk for them. But this is a game that we should win. I honestly think that we will definitely win this football game. We cannot play to the level of our competition. We got to step on these guys' throat. We got to step on it hard all 4 quarters and not come up for air. Not let them come up for air. Not, just full throttle on this football team. Send Kyle Shanahan back to the drawing board, because this San Francisco 49er team is very, very young. They're going to be good in a couple of years. I can guarantee you that. They're going to be a good team. They got a great head coach and a great GM in that football organization. If they can maintain patience at the ownership level, and let this team mesh and grow in the next 2 or 3 years, they're going to be a dominant football team in that NFC West. But right now, it's just not there. So that's going to do it for me, guys. We will catch you probably on the flip side of this Sunday morning game. And hopefully it's going to be another victory for the Washington Redskins before we go in playing against those dreaded, I think, who do we got next coming up after this? Right after this game, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles on the road, so we need this victory at home. So I'll catch you guys next time. We'll see you.